All right, hello and welcome. This is your, I was going to say Magic Madrid, but this is your Let's Six Football. It has been fucking forever. This is your host, Gabe Lesnar. We are doing our first live show on YouTube, so no editing exactly. I mean, our podcast listeners will actually see some of that editing stuff. Obviously, you got me here on the mic. This is Gabe Lesnar. I'm the host of the Magic Madrid podcast. This podcast, I'm on Magic Madrid, journalist. I cover soccer generally in Europe, and I'm also an attorney based in Washington, D.C. My buddy, Evan Mateer. Evan, how's it going? And welcome to our first fucking broadcast on YouTube live.
I know, man. It's been way too long. This is really cool. We are hip and with the kids now.
We are streamers now.
We are oh my god, we are streamers. We're not just
literally what we are.
Being a podcaster is so 2014. It's all about being a streamer now.
It's all about stream. So now what we're going to do is, instead of doing any analysis, any jokes, any covering of bad takes, we're just both going to play FIFA for the next 10 hours.
That's right.
I think that's basically what streamers do. So yeah, that's sort of what's going on.
Here's the thing though. I feel like the streamers are like, I feel really incredulous at the gamer streamers, because like yelling about FIFA while we play FIFA is a thing you and I have been doing for a long fucking time. And we just didn't ever put it on video.
They're taking our thunder, man. That's called plagiarism. In our profession, you get really screwed over for doing shit like that. Well, not really. I'm not an academic anymore.
I guess it depends on, like, in the journalism profession you do. In the legal profession, not really at all.
No, not really. Not
Control
really.
C, Control V. You have a brief.
So yeah, the basic premise of this show is two douchebag lawyer Americans kind of breaking down all the news of the week, focusing basically on the bad takes, trying to get into MLS. But this show, not so much MLS. Not saying there's not MLS news, but there's sort of a lot of European news that we kind of have to get to, Evan.
Yeah, it's been, I mean, obviously with the World Cup and then with the transfer window, and MLS is it's kind of like baseball. It has like a dog days in the middle of the season. That's kind of where MLS is right now. Also, Orlando City sucks. And so like
we do have some DC United news, and I was going to get to that because it's the most important news in world football right now, because it's in America. It's in the world capital. The world capital of the world, Washington, D.C. And guess who has arrived and who has made his debut for DC United as best player in the world? The best player in the world, Wayne Rooney.
The great English hope circa 2010.
Cheers. No, in all seriousness, I'm gonna need my drink of grappa, because my God, am I not excited for Wayne Rooney? But you know what, Evan? I watched some of it, and we weren't wrong to say that he already is better than like a lot of the players in MLS.
Yeah, no question at all. Like, he's just technically on another level, and I mean, he was reasonably effective, like in kind of a deep lying playmaker, like number 10 role for Everton last year, and not great, but he was fine. But like being fine in the Premier League translates to like kicking ass in MLS.
Yeah,
it's pretty much what's going on.
Kicking absolute ass. And you know, he actually is going to be pretty good for DC United. The problem is DC United sucks a huge amount of ass anyways, and just having one good player, as Argentina in the World Cup found out, not going to cut it. No, that's not a fair thing. Argentina actually had a pretty goddamn good team. And I'm sure that if Messi were to come to DC United, suddenly they'd be favorites to win the MLS Cup.
I think that's where that's headed, is Messi's going to go to United.
But DC United. So it's been almost a month since we actually last talked, Evan, and I just, right. There's so much important stuff that's gone on, and I just wanted to, break down the most important news of the month.
It must be about Ronaldo, right?
It is the fact that the psychic octopus in Japan was killed and eaten. So that is just terrible.
I really like the and eaten part.
Yeah.
Like, it's not just that they killed it. I think the old psychic octopus just like died because it was in a zoo or something.
Well, yeah, and the Germans wanted to kill it because they, obviously it picked Spain to beat Germany in the semifinals, and Spain actually brought the octopus. His name was Paul. and it lived out its days in Spain,
Right.
as a modern marvel,
Yeah.
As it should be.
But Japan just ate it. They're like, you know what? This was cute and everything, but also we're hungry.
Also good food. I love octopus. And you know what? Sequels are never as good as the first. You know, R.I.P. Paul, gone but not forgotten. Sequels are never as good as the first one.
That's true too. I was never really into Psychic Octopus 2.0.
No, not at all. But yeah, I wanted to bring up Wayne Rooney because he had arguably the tweet of the decade as he made his first debut here in MLS when he said, "Happy 4th of July to all at DC United fans and everybody celebrating, enjoying a day at the baseball.
Gotta go to
the
the
Nationals.
Gotta go to the baseball.
Let's go to the baseball, everybody. Have a good day at the baseball." I mean, that's a totally normal way to talk about it.
It's 100% chance that when he told like friends of his, like he called John Terry, he's like, "Yeah, I'm going to play at the MLS."
I'm 100% sure he said the MLS. And like, to be fair, I think it's pretty funny to say it's a day at the baseball. I mean, that is sort of what's going on. It's not like he's understanding what's going on the pitch. He's just at the baseball.
I mean, the baseball park, the baseball game, the baseball stadium.
Right.
You can't be at a verb.
Yes. I mean, what is baseball? I mean,
it's not a verb.
It's not a verb. It's not a verb.
Not a verb. It's now. It's just
congratulations to Wayne. Welcome. DC, the city welcomed Wayne Rooney by having some of the hottest days in living memory. It was about 110 and humid. So I'm hoping he's really happy with his decision to come from Manchester, where it was like 75 and cloudy, to DC.
Yeah, the DC summers are brutal. That's especially brutal. I didn't know it was that bad up there.
Yes. So
every day here.
Yeah. It's well, yeah, you're in the desert, but it's not as humid, I hope.
No, it's not. But like, I don't know, 110's 110 at some point.
So I wanted to continue with our theme of just extremely normal and good reactions to things. So Belgian manager Roberto Martinez, who I think we should now call the special one 2.0 just because of how incredibly annoying he is, came out after Belgium advanced past Brazil and said, and it's really just one of the great quotes, because anyone who follows the game knows that Roberto Martinez, not a good coach. But here it is. Here he says, "I've never lost a game on the tactics board. It's about the execution of the tactics."
Oh, Charlie doesn't like it at all.
Charlie's correct to not like it.
He's right. He's just right.
Roberto Martinez is one of the, I mean, he is buoyed. This Belgian team is buoyed by the fact that they have one of the greatest generations in the history of their players, right? Like Thibaut Courtois is their keeper, Eden Hazard, Kevin De Bruyne, Romelu Lukaku. These are just a group of supremely talented, world-beating players. And he executed a game plan against, a Brazilian team that out expected goals, not if that's a verb, but out expected goals his team by more than 2 goals. So yeah, your tactics, actually, his team won despite his tactics, not because of them.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have much to add to that other than, he was, yeah, there's a very strong case to be made that even a 3rd place run for this team is, kind of underperforming for this team. Like, a good manager does more with that talent. It was one of the more balanced teams in the tournament. He could never get service to Lukaku. He just let him get marked out of existence all the time. And yeah, I mean, only kind of moments of individual brilliance from Hazard really saved him.
And from Lukaku himself. I mean, let's just look quickly back to say that it's not like a ridiculous outcome if, Belgium had lost to Japan, who took a 2-0 lead on Belgium.
I forgot they should have lost that game. And it was only like like the Japanese playing badly there at the very end, even giving up that goal to lose, giving up that break, and then Lukaku being ridiculous on it.
Yeah, obviously Belgium managed to come back. Courtois had a number of crucial saves, but in another universe, it's not that different from this one. We're talking about how this Belgium team flamed out of the World Cup because their tactics were so bad that they were beaten by a Japanese team that, by all accounts, shouldn't have even made it to the next round.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's true. It's right. He sucks.
He does suck. And one of the things that has been really great for me personally, as a fan of Spain and the Spanish national team, is that there was a lot of chatter about maybe him taking over the Spain job, and thank God they gave it to someone else.
I didn't know that.
They gave it to Luis Enrique, the ex-coach of Barcelona and Roma.
I don't know why he was like a sought after coach coming out of Everton, but
Luis Enrique.
No, Martinez.
Oh, yeah. It doesn't make
no idea why he was sought after.
Well, I think all it shows, Evan, is how bad the talent at manager is on the international level. I mean, like Didier Deschamps, who is by all accounts one of the worst coaches in the world, managed to guide the Spain, this France team, to the World Cup final, which we're going to talk about in a second. But they won that game, and they won the final despite the absolute dog shit managing of this absolutely terrible coach, who took a team that had arguably the greatest attacking talent in a generation and made them a Italian Catenaccio style team that would win games 1-0 by sitting back the entire match. It was a nightmare.
Yeah, it makes it makes you wonder whether, the good coaches of the world, the Peps of the world, think if they, about timing their next job to if I just if they just hop into a World Cup squad like the year before, they could win the World Cup.
Yeah, I wanted to transition to another fantastic take, which is an article that appeared in The Guardian, which is trying to kind of explain to American fans what I think the way to call it is diving, but the article's title is "What is Shithousery and Why It's the World Cup's Biggest Problem." It's become the talking point of the tournament, but where does the term come from, and what are its worst examples? So, Evan, what is shithousery, and why is it the World Cup's biggest problem, bigger than the fact that the World Cup is being hosted by an authoritarian dictatorship, and the fact that FIFA literally sold it to them, among many, many other things, and the fact that FIFA literally, and we'll talk about this too, looked away and looked to the side while the Russian team doped its players.
Okay,
but shithousery the worst part of the World Cup?
Gabe, Neymar rolled around a couple too many times, and he was kind of whiny, and this is an affront to the dignity of the game, in a way that slavery or the promotion of the Syrian national team, which was being used for propaganda purposes in the Civil War, just simply isn't. Okay.
That's a really good point. I mean, it's not a problem that we now, that Gianni Infantino came out and said, thankfully, everyone has a much different view of Russia and Russia's government now that the World Cup happened. That's not a problem at all. The problem is the fact that Neymar, at full sprint, fell down and rolled one too many times on the pitch.
Look, when Dele Alli goes down easy in the box, it is a stain upon everything that is right and just in the world. When Vladimir Putin stands on the podium with the trophy after the final, it is just dignified.
It's true. And you know what the problem with Dele is? That he's not a real Englishman like Wayne Rooney.
This is really key.
He's not a real Englishman that'll stomp on someone's balls and then complain when the referee sends him off, and then have the entire media class blame someone else for him being sent off for stomping on someone's balls. Dele, on the other hand, will roll around on the ground after he gets decked for the 9th time in one game because he's not a real Englishman that can
which also, we have to be really clear that shithousery is Neymar being annoyed at his 27th foul in the first half. Shithousery is not committing 27 fouls on Neymar in the first half.
That's right. Shithousery is more of a problem that Neymar is complaining about the fact that a team is fouling him too much. And, shout out to David Rudin, our friend, for bringing this up. it is just a terrible article, and I encourage everyone to go check it out. I mean, as David says, the World Cup is being run by a comically corrupt organization and hosted by a repressive regime that has also systematic doping issues. I assume but I assure you that some rolling around on the ground is not as big its problem. Cannot agree more, David. Cannot agree more. So the next, I think, big topic that I wanted to get into is, so at the end of Uruguay, France, and Uruguay, it was Uruguay, France. So that was an interesting match because Uruguay looked to me like a team that really could make a deep run in the competition, but in minute 85, they were down 2-0. The French team did really have a strong defense. They didn't look like they were set to score, especially with Cavani out. So you saw some of the players on Uruguay's pitch begin to tear up because of how emotional and painful it is to lose a World Cup game when your entire country is supporting you. I think that any reasonable, respectable human being understands that. Gary Neville is not one of those people. Gary Neville went off on a rant. I think most particularly calling Jimenez's in-game cry particularly embarrassing. And my friend and friend of the show, Kean Stabani, and it's not embarrassing. It's a real feeling, and it's actually Gary Neville's statement that is embarrassing. And what I would say is the response to Keon's tweet is just, it is just, everyone has disgraced themselves. I think in particular, I wanted to highlight this particular person called at Real Madrid CFVN, saying, but this game is only for warriors. You should fight until the end instead of crying.
So obligatory mention that sports is not war and players are not warriors.
What's interesting to me, Evan, is this is actually the second podcast in a row that we've had to remind someone that this sport is not the literal act of killing someone on a battlefield.
It's true. It's very weird having to constantly remind people that actually war is war and sports are sports.
Yeah. It's not that hard to grasp. You see, in war, people die because other people make them die. And that's sort of that. In sports, people generally don't die. I mean, like there are, really random occasions where it happens, but it's not intentional.
Right. It's not the intent to kill somebody. It's the intent to score a goal.
It feels dumb that we have to explain that to these people.
Yeah, it's a little bit annoying. It's more than a little bit annoying. It's very
it's more than a little bit annoying. It's like there's this whole absolute, and what's cool about soccer, and I think especially soccer Twitter, is that it really does, at least the community of people that I think make up American soccer Twitter have really pushed back on some of these particularly toxic elements of the way that people commentate about the game. And there's this, because for Gary Neville, I have no doubt that if, Jose Manuel Jimenez had started crying at the end of the match, he would have said, well, look at that. That's the emotion that this game brings. But 5 minutes before the match, suddenly this is a game for warriors and you don't cry and you don't have emotion at all. I mean, these are the same people that, again, they defended Wayne Rooney stomping on someone's balls. Like, if this game is for gentlemen and for warriors, how can you square that with their literal, justification for the actions of some of the actual truly violent and destructive behavior of the players that they idolize and they like and they think are good representatives?
Yeah, I don't even know where to go with the stupid analogy. First off, the concept that people were actual warriors would never cry is stupid and wrong. Just to start with. So even if the analogy works, they're still idiots and still wrong. But I don't know. This is probably a freaking generational thing more than anything. It's just old crotchety dudes who, girls cry and guys don't cry, or, watching these younger guys with a different attitude towards that play of the game. And Yeah, just the the concept of like obviously sports is always like really bound up in like hyper masculinity, and that means different things for different generations, and for older generations it means that you're not supposed to cry, you're just supposed to drink a lot.
You just drink a lot after the game, and then go fight people in the pub and drive drunk home. I mean, that's literally what Wayne Rooney does. I'm sorry to keep picking on Wayne Rooney, but like he's in my city now. And, I walk around my city and don't drive drunk in my city, you absolute sack of shit who looks like someone who I'd find in a pub who just punched me for no reason. God. Okay. All right. I need to cool down. I'm gonna take a drink of my grappa here, and I want to transition. I want to transition to what I think, Evan, I think we can comfortably say is the weirdest story of this World Cup.
Yeah, that's probably right. And you're referring, of course, to the strange relationship. I don't even know exactly what to call it. The interactions between Mohamed Salah and the president of Chechnya. I believe it's pronounced Kadyrov.
Ramzan Kadyrov. Yes.
Kadyrov. Yeah, I can't really pronounce Russian shit.
And this is related. So now, like when I originally wrote this outline and wanted to talk about this, we hadn't seen the sort of denouement of the way this has gone down. But I think that it'd be instructive to talk a little bit about the background of who Ramzan Kadyrov is, Evan.
Yeah, so I mean, he is the president of Chechnya and noted piece of shit. So Chechnya is part of Russia, but it's like very autonomous. And he's given a lot of free reign to kind of run it with an iron fist, it's kind of an agreement, sort of wink and nod agreement with the Russian Federation that they will allow him to have a free hand in Chechnya if he's allowed in turn to kind of be a little dictator down there. And so he's, runs a very oppressive local government. It's very harsh towards, notably harsh towards LGBT community, dissidents, things like that. He's just really, all around a solid dude.
If you hear stories about LGBT concentration camps and disappearances in Russia, the I think correct assumption is that Ramzan Kadyrov and his government is probably behind it. He is one of the things that he is more than almost anything is a Islamic strong man. So he uses and perverts Islam to kind of hold his region, his semi-autonomous region, in an iron fist. I mean, obviously he's close to the actual Kremlin and the government there, but he does do his own sort of shit. And the way he does that is by cozying up to athletes, and especially Muslim athletes. And a lot of them, I mean, I won't say all of them, but a lot of them don't really understand what they're getting into, right? Because athletes are not the most bright people. They're not the people most political, I
mean, most of them are like 24 years old. Like, how many 24-year-olds just around the world randomly that you're going to pick up from like even a college campus are going to have any fucking clue what's going on in Chechnya?
Exactly. So I think the basic feeling that the international community has with him is that he really is a dictator, and he's trying to project in the same way that a lot of authoritarian regimes use sport to project their, and launder their image. And so one of the ways he's done that and try to confer himself legitimacy is by co-opting the image of Mohamed Salah, who is one of the, if not the most famous Muslim athlete in the world. So what we had reporting from during this World Cup from the absolutely unparalleled, just absolute phenom Karim Zidane. I think everyone should follow him. He's at Zidane Sports, Zidan, not the E, not like the Real Madrid player. And he has done just a ton of reporting on this stuff, and his reporting is absolutely fascinating, and it details the way that Ramzan Kadyrov wormed his way into the Egyptian Federation, to the extent that he actually got the Egyptian national, like hosted the national team, made sure that Salah was sitting next to him. There are these absolutely horrific pictures of him like grinning next to Mohamed Salah. And the other Egyptian players were at a different table. So he's using Salah's image to try to launder and expand his own image.
Yeah, he had like a bunch of photo ops. So he also like took him on a walk. He like gave him an honorary citizenship. So he could all these photo ops to make sure that he got him and Salah standing together, shaking hands, whatever, taking pictures.
And so the other thing that he's been doing is using UFC fighters to launder his image in the same sort of way. So there's a whole, and one of the things that Kareem has done such a great job reporting on, I can't stress, and I know I'm a fanboying a little bit, but Kareem is such a great journalist. And one of the things that he's done is really delineate all of the different contacts that Kadyrov has had with different sports figures, especially in the UFC world. And what he's now done is expanding his palette, his sphere of influence to football teams, and in particular this Egyptian national team, and in particular even within that Mohamed Salah. Now, when I began saying we should talk about this, it wasn't clear how Mohamed Salah felt about this and whether he knew he was being used right by not UFC, MMA. I want to be precise so I don't get accused, or I don't like mislabel Kareem's reporting. But what we're seeing now, and after the denouement of the World Cup, we've actually seen that Salah was incredibly upset with the way that his federation handled the Ramzan Kadyrov interaction. So it's worth noting that Salah was prepared to quit the Egyptian national team when it came out that they were going to be meeting and dining with Kadyrov, because Salah, like many other players, is someone who is a very liberal and regular Muslim, right? He's not someone who's some sort of ridiculous fanatic who wants to, help launder the image of this horrible dictator. And so Salah said that while he values his country, he's a patriot, he doesn't want to be, he felt very uncomfortable and didn't like being used as a puppet by Kadyrov, which is exactly what he was during the World Cup. It's a fascinating story. I encourage everyone to go check it out.
Yeah, I mean the Egyptian FA really fucked up. So Egypt was training, like their home base during the World Cup was in Chechnya, which was stupid to start with. And they did it, probably for very similar reasons that Kadyrov would prefer, which is one of the Muslim teams in the tournament having their home base and their training grounds in the Muslim region of Chechnya. So I mean that was a bad choice just to start with. And I think that Salah really didn't know a whole lot about about the specifics of the politics or anything like that. But I think that when he got this wave of criticism, when people started to see these pictures, he was just taken aback because, as a player, you expect the FA is going to take care of those things for you. Like they're not going to put you in compromising situations where you're going to get criticized. It's kind of their job to any athlete, right, is ushered around by press people, and you're trusting that those press people have your best interest at heart. And the FA just really let Salah down. And I think that's where the threats to quit the national team came from. It's, people were saying, oh, he's unpatriotic, he doesn't, love Egypt. And I think that's ridiculous. It was he felt betrayed by the FA. It wasn't about the Egyptian people or his country. It was about the FA in particular, using him.
And I think that speaks a lot to Salah's character. And like it's a complicated position to be basically the most loved athlete in a huge chunk of the world. Like all of Egypt, from all the reporting that we've done and people that I've talked to, like he's a man that brought Egyptian football onto the map. And like it's a huge weight of responsibility to be a player that represents the country and the hopes and dreams of these players the way that Salah did, especially with, and let's remember, an Egyptian team that kind of snuck into the World Cup on a very much a last second penalty, Evan.
Yeah, so it was, they had to get in. They were, I think, the last team to qualify out of Egypt. And yeah, I mean, it was a thrilling thing for them. I think that I think a lot of things were mixed together in like the criticism of Salah. Egypt did not have a good World Cup. I think they expected to break from the group stages and they didn't. And in part, they didn't break from the group stages because Salah didn't have a very good World Cup. And, fair or not, I think that was the expectation.
Yeah.
It didn't really pan out. And, you wonder how much of the criticism is also bound up with just disappointment in the performance just on the field.
Yeah. So I want to move forward from a team that didn't perform maybe as well as they should have, or as well as maybe you, Evan, who owe me a dinner bet on this, performed, to the team that I won my dinner bet on, the Russians. The Russians who I have a lot of things to say, and we have a couple of things that I want to talk about specifically with respect to this. But the Russians performed well beyond what anyone suggested that they might do in this World Cup. And it's not clear what exactly was the cause of that, because home field advantage, it does play a role.
Gabe, it's weird, right? Because there's a certain level of quality in that Russian team that we've seen these players play at club level. We know how good they are. We know how good they were in other games. In fact, we know how they performed in other matches leading up to the World Cup, and the performance wasn't good. It's almost like there was something that enhanced their performance.
It's amazing. I have no idea what could possibly make a team that looked really old and didn't run that much, and somehow they became through the first 3 games the team that ran the most sprint miles in the entire tournament. I wonder what could possibly have I wouldn't say like enhanced, but made their performance better in a way that was random, totally random, and we're not saying that there's anything else going on. It's just totally random. And hi, Putin,
if
your team is really great.
So my other thought is this, right? So we just had another international competition where a lot of citizens of the state of Russia participated. And I wonder if we could, look at their participation and things we know from there that indicated why these Olympic athletes might have performed well. And if there's any lessons we can learn from how Russia approaches the Olympics to how they might have achieved these results in the World Cup.
I wonder if it's possible that there is an entire documentary that's been made about something that has any relation to this, Evan. Have you heard of such a thing?
I heard whispers of something at like some kind of a small film festival, like the Academy Awards or some crap, talking about something to do with Russian
fake news. Academy Awards.
That's the liberal elite.
Yeah, it is a very much a fake news documentary that showed that the actual Russians engaged in a systematic program of doping their athletes that led to them entire country being banned from an entire Olympics. Fake news.
When Icarus, the documentary, said that the entire Russian team at the behest of the Russian government and run by the Russian sports agencies did all engage in doping, they really meant to say didn't.
Yeah, well, that actually is now a regular thing that people do. And, sometimes you misspeak. Sometimes you say, yeah, I took those banned substances. And what they meant was, no, I didn't take those banned substances. And that's what A-Rod famously said after he didn't take those banned substances. And now he is totally fine and everyone likes him.
I'm glad, though, that there's no indication that FIFA knew about any wrongdoing with the Russian team leading into the tournament.
That is the most important part of all of this.
Because we could not
FIFA...
stand FIFA being corrupt.
Right.
That's the biggest thing.
Right. The biggest possible thing that could be bad would be that FIFA may have. Hang on, I'm receiving a report that FIFA knew about the cover up of Russia's players' positive drug test 18 months ago. I'm receiving that right now. What?
Son of a bitch.
Yep. Interesting. I've also been told that the grappa that I've been drinking has been infused with a nerve agent, and I will be dead in the next 10 minutes. So you're going to have to take it over from here.
Yeah, this is your host, Evan Mateer.
Oh, it's really cool. It's really regular. I mean, they didn't win the World Cup, Evan.
Oh, thank fucking God. Thank God they only made it to the quarterfinals.
And beat my team. God damn it. I'm so fucking angry about this. I can't deal with this.
Such a stupid game. God, Spain, man. Not great. It turns out, in fact, and I think we had a chance, I think, to talk our last time. It was right when Spain had fired their manager heading in the World Cup. And we kind of disagreed a little bit on how big an impact that would make, but it looks like it went not great.
You were right about that. The impact was substantial. But what I will say is I feel a little vindicated, and God, it's amazing that we haven't really talked about this since then. But what's amazing to me about the entire Spain situation is that they actually played basically the right tactics and were by far the better team against Russia in that first 90 minutes. And then really the extra time as well. They actually outplayed the Russians. The Russians somehow, I'm not sure how they did it. It's incredible. Totally unsure why. But they didn't make a single substitution and ran and sprinted every single second of that 120-minute game. And then they went to penalties.
I mean, it's because they're such a young and energetic and spry team, right?
That's right.
They're all 50.
Yeah, they have no one on that team that's over 40.
That's crazy. God, I can't wait until we have a nice non-controversial World Cup.
Yeah, I can't wait until 2050 to have that when we're all fucking dead. But what's really interesting about this whole thing is that we are a podcast that is obsessed, and not obsessed, but appropriately obsessed with FIFA and how FIFA has managed this systematic cover up of all the different abuses in their system. And this is just one of a number of 1 billion different cover-ups in their system. And people have been bringing up the fact that Russians have been running longer, they've been running harder, and they've been running faster than any other team by far, even though that was never the game that they ever played. In fact, they were the bottom of any World Cup team. They were, along with Panama, the worst team coming into this World Cup. And not only did they qualify out of the group stage, they beat one of the favorites for the finalists, to be a finalist in the World Cup. And yeah, I blame Spain almost entirely for that result, but you can't discount the fact that Russia managed to run for 120 goddamn minutes of that game. They managed to keep it so that they could run counterattacks and stop Spain at every juncture. It was incredible.
Yeah, I mean, it's really frustrating to see. I don't actually know what the and I probably should figure this out. I don't know what the drug testing regime during the World Cup is. I actually don't know if there is one. But if there isn't, then it's a crying shame, and there should be. Yeah. To actually see what these people are on.
The entire point of Icarus, right? And everyone should watch this movie. Is that the Russians laundered all of their drug testing through because the WADA had a drug testing facility in Russia, and the Russian government just laundered all of the Russian tests. So there's a reason that the Russians never came up positive, and it's because they goddamn it laundered all of the results through their own anti-doping agency. That's what the Icarus guy says. Everyone should watch that movie. It not only does it would it shock you if you're a person that cares about international sports at all? It's also a really good TV.
Yeah, it's a great documentary. Everyone really needs to watch it, and it will make you feel very upset about How is international sports so fucking corrupt? Like, it's just shocking. How unbelievably corrupt. It's of all the things in the world to be mindlessly corrupt, international sports has got to be the weirdest.
It is, because I mean, like, yeah, there's a lot of money, but comparatively
money,
speaking,
like, yeah, compared to like
that much money.
No, you make more money selling like Ziploc bags than you do selling, soccer.
No, it's unbelievable. I also, I just want to transition away from this because it's just going to make me angry, and I don't want to break my.
I'm not drinking, and you're drinking, and I can't do this without drinking.
Yeah, fair. I just want to shout out to my man Grant Wall, who had one of the. I'm gonna splice for our podcast listeners. I'm gonna splice in this audio. But what Grant basically went on this rant. I wouldn't call it a rant. He said, I'm just going to summarize it. And Grant, if you're listening to this and you feel like I didn't do a good job, just let me know. Okay?
Come on the
show. Come on. Come on.
Show,
Let's Fix Football, Grant. We'll talk to you about it. Grant Wall said, basically, well, when I came to Russia, I didn't really know what to expect. And yeah, I didn't like their government, but in general, all the Russians that I've met have been just incredibly nice and wonderful. And what I would say to Grant is this: like, if you went to a country expecting everyone in that country to be douchebags, then you're an unbelievably closed-minded idiot.
Also, yeah,
like you're going to like people are people. You're gonna meet assholes, but most of the time people are pretty nice,
and you're largely meeting people who have like a similar interest and background with you, right? You're a sports journalist, you're going to be at sporting events where people like are football fans, and so you've already got some common ground. It's not like you're wandering out to like some village where there's a huge cultural gap between you and these, this Russian grandmother who doesn't understand what you or whatever.
Even then, like, people are just gonna be people, and like a lot of the time with almost everyone, and I've done a fair amount of traveling around, like people are generally pretty welcoming and nice. They just want to meet you and say hello and show you their lives. Like,
but counterpoint France.
My experience in France was pretty good, unless you go to Paris.
Paris is exactly what I'm talking about, and they're the fucking worst. They've earned every bit of that stereotype.
They really have. But Russia, if you went in thinking that every Russian is some vodka swilling, wife beating piece of shit, like, you're going to be pleasantly surprised. But the truth is that everyone, like, it is actually xenophobic to go into a country assuming that everyone's going to be sort of a douchebag.
I feel like this version of this this version shows up as a version of a travel article for like twice a year for every single dictatorship in the world. It's like, I went to Iran and everyone was nice. And it's like, yeah, because they're like not actually all these, the Revolutionary Guard Corps. They're just people who want to sell you bread.
And like, what was really, I mean, I guess to Grant's credit, he at least admitted his prejudices going in, like that he expected a lot worse than what he got, right? But like, I can't, the self-awareness to broadcast
xenophobia was wrong.
Can you imagine like going on TV and being like, wow, it's amazing. I expected all these people to be like Russian babushkas who drank vodka and like tried to beat me up just for being Americans. But actually, they all just turned out to be relatively normal people. And, most of them were pretty nice and some of them weren't nice.
So here's a counterpoint, even though it is still fairly asinine the way he framed it. I think it would be safe to assume that this is a prejudice that many Americans would have before traveling to Russia. Sure. And so maybe this is a thing that they need to hear.
Yeah. I think that's the best possible rating of this.
Though then probably the framing should be different than I expected this. More like, you never know, you might be concerned about what the people are like in Russia since you don't like their government. Well, let me tell you, they're people.
They are. They're people. Amazingly enough, they are in fact people. I don't know, man. This was infuriating. But what wasn't infuriating is how the Croatian players, after beating Russia in another penalty shootout, where I will add, the Russian players once again sprinted for 120 minutes. Yeah. they trolled Russia by chanting "Viva Ukraine! This victory is for Ukraine." And look, the Croatian players, as a general rule, I loved a few of them, but they do have some pretty shady characters in that dressing room. But this was fucking hilarious, and I don't care about their politics in this particular respect. That was an absolutely hilarious thing to do.
So along with this, I actually also really loved the Albanian / Kosovar members of the Swiss team who were doing the double eagle celebration, the Albanian double eagle celebration after they beat Serbia. Was a big fan of that. FIFA was not a big fan of that.
Yeah, no.
They ended up finding the Kosovar players. But I thought it was
awesome. I fucking hate FIFA.
Yeah, they find them.
I like the idea of coming back to just fucking hating FIFA. And the way that I want to come back to just hating FIFA is by reading you some quotes from our man, Gianni Infantino. And you can, when you're done with this segment, go ahead and tweet him. It's at Infantino on Twitter. No.
It's really not.
I'm really okay. I realize this is our first live broadcast, so you may be experiencing this show for the first time. This running joke of ours. Sepp Blatter once tweeted at Infantino to try to convince Gianni Infantino, the president of FIFA, about something. At Infantino is actually a Twitter account run by a Southern California-based infant toy product company.
It's like a baby toy startup.
But I just want to read some quotes from our beloved FIFA president Gianni Infantino about this tournament. So one of the questions was, we prepared special police forces for the tournament, and Gianni Infantino says, yes, all of them smile. That's nice. The atmosphere is really one of celebration of football and of the world. Finally. The question, as FIFA, you personally preparing this Mundial, this World Cup, worked very closely with contacts with the Russian authorities. You several times met with President Putin. It would be fair to say this World Cup was prepared and is under President Putin's patronage. How did it work? How did you feel about this tournament? And he said, well, with the help of President Putin and the whole Russian government has been crucial for the success of this World Cup. I've never witnessed such a big commitment from the top to the bottom, because the top sets the tone and the bottom has then to work in making this a success. We have met several times. We were discussing, of course, the organizational sides. We would have 3 million people attending this event. 98% of all stadiums are full. This is only possible if every detail is working. And this is really, to a big extent, thanks to the excellent work of President Putin, who at the beginning, he was maybe not the biggest football fan. He prefers some other sports, I've been told. But now the virus has packed him as well, like the whole of Russia. Oh, I know. And later he says, and that's what this is all about. And that's the image we want to portray in football. And that's the image of Russia as well, which fully fits into this. No more fearing Russia and about whatever violence or discrimination or God knows what. Nothing of this has happened. Nothing is more far from reality. Some others were fearing that Russia is not a football country. Well, I think that latest since this World Cup, Russia is one of the biggest football countries in the world, not only on the pitch, but outside the pitch. Nothing is more far from reality than Russia being a organization that they're a country that doesn't have violence.
So, Gabe, I'm curious because I can't remember. Is Russia still occupying Crimea?
Well,
or did Infantino negotiate that out?
I was under the impression that Russia, that is Russia, Evan.
Is being gay still basically illegal in Russia?
That actually is on the books as well.
That's weird because I'm being told by Infantino that like all the dreams of liberal democracy in Russia have come true because they made $60 billion at a World Cup.
No more fearing about Russia and about whatever violence or discrimination or God knows what. God does know what, Infantino.
God, I mean, like the idea. So, I mean, I think so. First off, the World Cup went relatively smoothly, more or less. I think that like if FIFA wants to say that, that's fairly accurate. Like there weren't a lot of like security issues. There were incidents of violence because I personally know people who were sexually assaulted and stuff in Russia. So like that happened. But as a general rule, went fairly well. The problem with the whole way that Infantino is framing it is like, well, it went fairly smoothly. TV wasn't too interrupted. We made plenty of money, and so everything's great. Look, you were all overreacting.
Of course they were. Nothing of this has happened, Evan.
Yeah.
Nothing of this. Nope. Nothing is more far from reality.
Yep. There was no violence, no discrimination.
I mean, I'm just people say that the World Cup is just propaganda for the regimes that buy it, basically. And I generally feel like the World Cup is the World Cup and it can be manipulated. It's a thing, and it's not that it should be and can be separated from these things, but it's a thing that exists in of itself that can be manipulated. And in this case, it's so obvious exactly what the Russian Federation was, the Kremlin was doing with this World Cup.
It is no coincidence, right, that Brazil, which was seeking to kind of have a coming out party as one of the BRIC countries, had back-to-back World Cup and Olympics. And then that Russia, which is one of the BRIC countries that wanted to have a coming out party on the global stage, also had back-to-back World Cups and Olympics, right? The reason why these countries are all in to get these tournaments and these games, legitimately or not, and really, let's just be completely honest, fucking not legitimately. The reason why they're going all out to buy these things is because of how valuable they are as a propaganda tool. Russia spent like $50 billion. That's not, I'm not just making that number up. That's how much they spent on like everything around the Winter Olympics. And they did it so that they could have this big, look how great Russia is party. And the World Cup's the same way, just a little bit cheaper.
Yep. I don't have.
And then Infantino's just fucking playing into the hand, right? That's what's infuriating about these comments. He knows what Russia paid for, and he's going to make sure that Russia gets their money's worth.
I don't have anything to add to that. And I think that the best thing that we can do in order to save any possibility of us ever visiting Russia, because I would like to one day go to St. Petersburg, Evan, is to move on.
Yeah. I mean, I'm actually kind of worried about these red dots around my office right now. This is concerning.
I mean, I've been hearing a beeping from under the desk here, and I'm hoping it's my coffee maker, but it sounds a little closer than that. So let's go on and talk a little bit about the final of the World Cup. So basically what happened in the semifinals is that France beat Belgium in a game that promised to be one of the best games in the World Cup, and actually ended up being a match where France played a very Italian style of football, and Belgium spent most of the game trying to break down that French wall. I mean, I said at the beginning, Evan, that and we can go back and look at these, that France was the best team in this World Cup, and they, I think, pretty clearly were. That being said, I don't think they played the most exciting game. Like that wasn't their style. That wasn't the Deschamps style.
Yeah, what's annoying is that they were clearly the best team, but they felt like they were being held back the whole time. Like, you felt like this team should have just, like, this was a great World Cup entertainment wise. This was not a great World Cup talent wise, or in terms of like how well the teams were playing. Like, the teams kind of sucked overall.
Yeah, I agree.
And so France really should have just really sliced through this World Cup, and they did. And they didn't, because they were held back from playing the type of, free flowing, irresistible force type of football that they could have played. And it was a shame, because it would have been fun to watch them, eat people up 6-0.
It would have, and they could have. And that's sort of what gets me about the way that Deschamps kind of approached this World Cup. And part of what really gets me, on top of all this is that I get it. And I hate that I get it. You know what I'm saying? Like I hate that I get that Deschamps didn't want to risk too much because he knew that he had a fantastic back line. Like Umtiti and Varane are two of the best center backs in the entire world. If I think that Varane personally is my pick for, best, if not second best in the entire world at center back, and Umtiti is certainly up there as well. So if you've got, and Pavard, and then in front of those two players, those two inarguably, especially Varane, but inarguably good players, you've got Kanté, right? You're not going to give up that many goals. And if you want to play this kind of slow, not Catenaccio exactly, but a very slow, a very, very slow build up, you can. And that is infuriating.
Yeah. Well, and I think it's not just that they had a strong line. It's also that they had Pogba, who was, I think, really key to that slow buildup. Well, he kind of was the trigger between either a very slow buildup or when they did really let Mbappe run. That was the guy who was key in transition. Yeah. And I will say that to Deschamps' credit, Pogba he always looks good kind of in that deeper role. And I think the United has had, mixed success pushing him further up the pitch. But he is he's great everywhere. He is really good in that deeper role. And he was really, really effective in front of the back line.
He was. And he, I think, showed some of the value that he could, that with perhaps a better or a more, could have really shown. Unfortunately, he plays for Jose Mourinho, who does not value this particular type of player.
Yeah, weird.
But I would say that given all of that, Croatia actually really did dominate the midfield portion of the match. Like that's partially because Kanté dropped so deep and allowed not Rakitic, but really Modric to create in that final third, and Perisic to get in behind and create opportunities that, ultimately they weren't particularly well taken and they weren't particularly high XG chances. But if you look at that first half, Evan, France actually had 0.0 XG.
Yeah, because the own goal obviously counts for no XG.
Even though that would have been because if it had glanced off of, Baran's head, or
it would have been a pretty high XG. So, and I mean, without the touch that caused the own goal, it's probably going to be a really solid shot on goal,
right?
For France. So, it's 0, but it kind of with a caveat, but you're right though. They weren't creating chances in the first half. They were pretty lucky. In the first half, and they didn't really start creating chances until they just started bypassing the midfield altogether by launching the ball over the top to Mbappe. Like that's when they started creating chances,
right?
And Griezmann,
and that one of the interesting things about this World Cup is the way that I think we can see that tactics have begun to evolve towards the Gareth Southgate model, which is essentially creating a wing heavy approach that bypasses a midfield and focuses on a very, very talented offensive line that includes very fast players, but also includes very good, distributors. So in that model, Harry Kane, for example, plays the role of almost a false 9.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
No. You know this better than I do because you have been following the English team for a long time.
So Harry Kane was getting a lot of criticism for not having more chances from open play, right? He's won the Golden Boot, but he won it off set pieces and penalties. But what people, I guess, weren't paying enough attention to is that he was being asked to drop way back into midfield to collect the ball and then distribute it, kind of like a false 9, or almost just playing as kind of a straight up number 10 sometimes, with, kind of in that space because he's a great distributor. And theoretically, this role is fairly interchangeable with the other forwards. But it just so happens that, Raheem Sterling is, his skill set is running in behind, and Harry Kane's a better distributor. And so he's playing for that second striker role. But you're right that the idea was basically, we're not going to have a midfield. We're playing Dele Alli essentially as a midfielder, but he's going to push forward. So, sometimes this ends up looking like a 3-1-6 basically. It works sometimes. Sometimes not having a midfield against Croatia was a really bad fucking idea. But you're asking Harry Kane to drop back and collect the ball.
Yeah. I think in chunks against that Croatia, especially in the World Cup final, but in a lot of other matches, the Raheem Sterling factor, just literally how fast Raheem Sterling was against Croatia. I meant to bring back the England tactical thing, but England thrived partially because of how threatening Raheem Sterling's pace was, and because the smart tactical play against a team like England is to push your defenders up and really overload that between midfield and defense channel so that they can't have any service. But because of Raheem Sterling's specific pace, and in the French case, Mbappe's pace, and Greenspan's a fast guy, but Mbappe specifically, they actually had teams that really couldn't, push as far up enough to really cut off those passing lanes. And that, I think, was really important both for England and for France. Now, what I'm really interested in is how Belgium defended England. But what was interesting more about that game was that it struck me that it didn't seem like England really tried as hard as I expected them to.
No, they did not. They did not give a shit about that game. I think that England, and I don't know exactly why the mentality might have been different for Belgium. It might be that, England's just a younger team, and they were probably buying some of their own bullshit after a little while. They were getting slurped pretty hard. And, and so when they lost when they lost a semifinal that they very, very, very well could have won, and arguably should have won, given the position they had going into the second half, there's, into the end of the second half, really, they probably should have won that match. I think that was probably just too much of a blow for them. And they just didn't care.
Yeah, that was a tough match for England, I think. Now, I don't want to take anything away from Croatia because I do think they are deserved finalists. Like one of the what really strikes me about this Croatian team was not just that what they did was showed a tactical response, right, to the kind of modern trend to abandon this center midfield or play like France did, which is with one center defensive midfielder. Brazil, I actually think that Brazil probably would have progressed past Belgium if Casemiro hadn't been card tied, because Casemiro played the same role for Brazil that Kanté played for France, in that he was this the only player in center midfield that really could play in between those two lines of those two lines and prevent those balls through. So it was a fascinating thing where the Croatians said, well, okay, if this is what the tactics are, we're gonna play to our strengths. And I thought that it actually worked really well against the various teams that they played. I mean, obviously, like, they didn't exactly have the toughest road, like playing Russia. But they did play a Russia team that was basically just fucking Dolph Lundgren from Rocky IV, like being injected with fucking steroids while they're lifting kegs over their heads. But like, they managed to beat them in the penalty shootout, so who cares? But like, ultimately, this Croatian team was a fascinating team, and what in addition to their tactical versatility and their tactical decision to say, screw it, we're not going to try to respond to our opponent's tactics. And, we're going to allow Trippier to have all of that space, right?
Yep.
And we're gonna trust in our defenders to try to mark him, which they didn't, right?
No.
Trippier was the man of the match every match for England, basically.
Yeah.
And we're just gonna assume that our center midfielders are gonna be able to do this for them. It's a ballsy play, and I respect the crap out of Croatia. It bums me out a little bit that they lost that match in the manner that they did. I think we as a watching public deserved a little bit closer, closer match.
And the X goal kind of shows us that we should have, 9 times out of 10 we get a closer match out of that.
Yeah, we did.
The X goal was way closer than the scoreline. Croatia. A team like France has like a million options in how they want to set up and how they want to play. And like they maybe took the less obvious way, like we talked about, but they had a lot of options. Croatia didn't have a ton of options for how to play. Like they're a smaller team. They have less depth. They have to play to their best players. And what do they have? They have the best center midfielders in the world. They have the single best center midfielder in the world in Modric. And then they have a lot of other really good midfielders. And I can just think off the top of my head, just so many tomes when, Modric or Kovacic would just sneak up behind someone, just completely pick their pocket, and just, instantly transition to a big chance, especially at the end of the England match when they were just creating chance after chance. They were all being created out of that deep midfield area. And it is not, you're right, it's not how teams play very often these days. It's not the high velocity up the wings over the top game or the slick passing around the box game that most teams are trying to play, but it was really, really cool to watch.
Yeah. Okay. Last topic, and I think we're going to touch on it quickly because I want to do it more next week. Because it's really going to be a finals it's going to be it's a post World Cup topic, and it's really a transfer, and like we don't have that anyways, but I do want to say arguably the biggest news of the week, other than the World Cup final, Real Madrid have sold Cristiano Ronaldo to Juventus, and it turns out that Real Madrid fans are having really regular ones about it.
It's a super normal reaction all across the board to a star player leaving. I think that's fair.
To be fair, all right. So and to be fair, a lot of Real Madrid fans are actually not ironically having normal ones. Like,
right.
This is like, I think that I don't want to be the guy that takes credit, but like our group of people that I work with, Keon, our podcast, our work really has been preparing people for this for a while. And I think that Real Madrid's board has been preparing this for a while because they've seen, the end, any dynasty, if they're not prepared for the next stage after the dynasty is over, is going to end up with a prolonged period of not being that good. And Real Madrid is not a team that deals with a prolonged period of not being that good very well. So the way that Madrid has been preparing for the end of this dynasty, has been by acquiring extremely exciting young talent. Now, they missed out on Mbappe last year, and if they'd gotten him, then I would be incredibly fine with everything that's going down. But Real Madrid still has a incredibly young, very exciting team, and the belief at the moment is that they are going to hand off this incredibly exciting young team to Lopetegui. That being said, what we saw was this. One of the coolest things, Evan, was that the Real Madrid official account lost 1 million followers, and the Juventus official account gained 1 million followers in one day.
That's awesome.
How cool is that shit? That's so cool.
Twitter.com is so stupid.
I mean, the fanboy, it's sports. People should support teams and players the way that they want.
No, you're right. And I've never, I know that there's a lot of people who watch sports that way. There's people in the US who watch sports that way, who they're more fan of a player than a team. I worked with a guy once who was the biggest Terrell Owens fan in the world. He owned a Terrell Owens jersey from every team that he ever played on. And whenever he went to a new team, he bought a new Terrell Owens jersey because he was a Terrell Owens fan.
That's what
he was a
is.
fan of. That's what he liked. And I think you see it a lot in basketball, right?
I do want to shout out the guy who, the Magic Madrid account on our Facebook. It wasn't even fucking anything to do with Ronaldo. Tweeted out a picture of Alfredo Di Stefano, who, won the first 5 Champions Leagues for Real Madrid. Like, he is the club legend. He made the club what it was. Like, it's like Lou Gehrig, that kind of like, or Babe Ruth, really, in soccer, in Europe at least. Mm-hmm. And so they tweeted out like, "Oh, it's been 4 years since you died, like gone but not forgotten." Check out this response. Are you trying? You are trying to hard admin. It is not working. Let's value what we have right now, not what we have or things past. Don't try to diminish the GOAT because you are mourning his departure. Ronaldo took us from a black and white club to the most dominant club of the 21st century. Ronaldo is the most important figure in the 21st century. Your statements this past few weeks have been childish and weak. That is in response to a Alfredo Di Stefano gone but not forgotten post.
It's very regular response to an in memoriam.
Yeah. Everyone having an extremely, extremely regular one. Speaking of people who are, generally, over the last week have been having an extremely regular one, the president of the United States has weighed in on Cristiano Ronaldo. President Donald J. Trump, sorry. President Donald J. Trump has weighed in, saying, and I quote, yeah, great. No. I think, and the president of Portugal says, no doubt about it, for the world. President Trump says, let me tell you, how good a player is he? Are you impressed? And he says, I'm very much impressed, sir. He is the best player in the world, Cristiano Ronaldo. So in a sense, well, I think he has been a success. I do agree with you. The championship, yes. And President Trump says, so, yeah, will Christian ever run for president against you? He wouldn't win. He won't. You would win. So there you go.
Yeah.
Donald Trump.
Yeah. I mean, I won't say much about this other than, like, of course he thinks that Cristiano Ronaldo should run for president. Like, why wouldn't he?
That makes a lot of sense. Everyone is generally having an extremely regular one with respect to this. The last thing I want to say is that I think there is a lot of there's a huge question about whether there's going to be FFP, financial fair play issues with respect to the way Juve is going to pay for this, because the transfer itself is 105 million, which is, I think a lot for a 33-year-old player, but whatever. That's actually not the issue. The issue is that Cristiano Ronaldo demands a 30 to 35 million euro after tax payment, which means that in Europe, especially, this is a 60 to 70 million dollar or euro a year payment from Juve, which is almost it's about a quarter of the total amount that Juve is paying to its players currently. And that includes Higuain and a couple of their other big stars. So Juve doesn't have a lot of ways to increase its revenue.
Yeah, to my knowledge, they do not have access to a sovereign wealth fund that can just renegotiate some contracts.
So we will see in the next few months how Juve exactly, and I've got an article coming out about this, how they try to deal with this, and whether it's obviously UEFA will have to really show us in the next couple of years whether they really take FFP seriously, because the best way that I've heard that Juve can deal with this is by appealing to Ferrari, which is the owner of Juve also owns Ferrari. And if Ferrari can somehow also sponsor half or more of Cristiano Ronaldo's salary, then maybe Juve doesn't have to put that on the books. Now, that to me seems like a payment that UEFA will investigate.
I'd be very interested in the actual like structure and what Ferrari is buying.
Exactly.
There.
So we'll have to see exactly how this goes down.
I'd imagine it'd be some kind of like sponsorship deal, right? So like some kind of additional sponsorship that would just go towards the salary or something.
That's right. But the thing is that Cristiano Ronaldo is also a player who does have a fair amount of ego with respect to how he is paid vis-a-vis the other players in the world. So he may want, I don't know. I'm really up in the air about whether Juve is going to make this work. Not the first year. I actually think, because remember, UEFA FFP is retrospective. This year it's going to work. The question is, in 2019-2020, which is the year that UEFA will be investigating Juve, whether this is going to work out on a financial fair play level. And I think it's an absolute open question. Yeah. If anything, I think it's more likely than not that UEFA will come down with sanctions to Juve.
And there's a lot of like just chatter and smoke about them selling Higuain right now, and that's directly related, I think, to the Cristiano Ronaldo play.
But on some level, like if Juve has to sell all of its absolutely high-end elite talent, what is the point of bringing in? I mean, like obviously to increase the global brand, but are they really making themselves more likely to be Champions League contenders if they have to sell Higuain and Dybala and some of their other players in order to like satisfy the wage demands of Cristiano Ronaldo? It's a totally open question.
Yep.
And we'll have more on this next week when we come back to you. I promise that in the future we will be more public. We'll publicize these live shows. I'm going to edit this and obviously release this on the podcast player as well. But for now, that is your Let's Fix Football for this week. And I hope you guys all enjoyed this live show. This is sort of like the direction I think that I want to go with this. I'm pretty into it. I'm not going to lie. This is my cousin who is 12 years old idea, but you know what? He is the future of this medium. And if we can do this and do this well, and if you guys like this, let us know. You can find us obviously on YouTube now, but also on the iTunes store, and let us know how you're thinking. So until next week, Evan, it's been fun.
Catch you later, buddy.